Hey, everybody. Making sure the microphone works here. I think it's on. Let me double check because I tend to go on for an hour without the microphone on. So, all right, I'm going to turn it up. All right, should be good. Okay. Hello, everybody. So it's late on a Tuesday night, probably too late. But I was just listening to one of the videos from our buddies over at Typebook, um, and it motivated me to sort of go live and sort of express some thoughts on actually an issue that been sort of tinkering around, sort of been bouncing around in my head for a while, but I had a kind of a hard time of sort of formulating it or framing it in the right way. Lo and behold, they had a video on that I'm linking below on melancholy and lead intuitives, and it sort of fit the framework of I think a point or an issue something I wanted to discuss. Um, so the video I linked below talks about NI dominance, INFJs, INTJs, and how at least in their experience, they they tend to be a little melancholy, or maybe sentimental. Might be another way of putting it, but melancholy, sentimental, um, and they just sort of discuss why that is. And I'm going to do the annoying INFJ thing and sort of butt in and talk about what I think is going on. And sort of my take of melancholiness, sentimentality, and NI, especially NI dominant folks, um, and just sort of expound on sort of some of the ideas that they brought up, which I thought was really interesting. So please feel free, watch their video and come back and you can get my sort of take on it. Okay, so they they're making the point in their video that, at least again, this is just from their personal experience. They're not trying to paint, any sort of broad brush on all INFJs or INTJs, anything like that. But in their experience, they are sort of recalling some times where they were sort of melancholy about events, sentimental, but in this way that like you don't really expect from young children. Um, and they sort of pin it as in, the way that I was sort of interpreting what they were talking about was they were pinning it as they sort of had this understanding of what was happening around them, and it sort of made them maybe a little bit more melancholy, maybe a little bit more sentimental because things were changing, and they didn't really like the fact that things were changing, right? And it made them sort of sad about the fact that a holiday season is over, as an example they used, or maybe the school year is over. Another example they used, and I've got to say, I can relate, certainly. I remember when I was younger, when the new year changed, right? When it changed from like 1980 to 1981 or 88 to 89, having this sort of weird existential crisis, it's like a little kid, right? That where nobody is ever going to have that year again, right? That 1981 is over, 1988 is over, and there will never ever ever be another 1988. And to me as a little kid, that freaked me out. I mean, I guess you could sort of explain it as being melancholy or sentimental, but it also just sort of created this weird existential crisis in my head. Um, and I don't know if that's typical lacrosse types. To me, it seems like a very NI type of thing, and I'll sort of explain why I think that in a second. But I even still get it to this day. I'm less concerned about the change of the year. I guess I'm just older and I'm used to it. It doesn't freak me out as much in that sort of existential way. Um, but it is kind of weird, the fact that like there'll never be a 2023 again, and you'll never have anybody living in a 2023. To me, that just feels weird. And I can't articulate it. I can't explain it other than to just say it's weird to me. Um, but I also get it, now that I'm sort of older, there are a lot of people, people that I've known personally, or just sort of people that were famous, right? Like famous actors, famous musicians, bands that I was really into, when I was in high school or in college, that now when I see them on, they put out new music or they're being interviewed or something, and I see them and they're 20 years older or they're 30 years older, it freaks me out. It like in this way that I can't explain, right? And yes, logically, they're 30 years older. You should expect them to be, reflective of whatever age they are. But in my mind, they are not 30 years older. They are still the same people that I listen to, when we're talking about famous bands or something, when I was a teenager or when I was in college. And to see them aged, right? Even though, it's obviously the same person, just absolutely freaks me out. And it does give me this kind of deep sense of sentimentality, melancholy. And the same thing with Facebook. Like I can't even go on Facebook anymore. Like it really got to the point, and it wasn't just because Facebook is kind of annoying, but to me it was just like I kept seeing these people that I grew up with who have aged just like I have, and seeing them 20 years later, and some of them are grandparents and some of them are close to retirement, and it's just like I just can't handle seeing that. Like it really bums me out, it really depresses me, not because they're having a bad time at life. In fact, most of them seem to be having the best time of life, and really enjoying themselves. It's nothing like that. It's not because anybody's having a bad time. It's just that's not who they are in my mind, right? And it kind of weirds me out. And so I'm thinking about, I was listening to this video and it sort of prompted this idea that's been sort of bouncing around in my head about NI. And it also sort of goes to the comment that somebody had made that motivated my last video about, is NI somehow locked in to sort of a timelessness or a way of sort of time shifting. And I think, and here's my INFJ theory, right, of what I think is really going on. I think what NI is doing is, it's creating this knowledge, or this representation of the essence of something or the meaning of something, right? It's not just simply identifying like this is a cup, or this is the lead singer of such and such band, or this is my best friend from fifth grade, or this is my you know high school teacher, or anything. It's creating more of a deeper meaning. Like, what does it mean to be that person? What does it mean to be in a classroom setting, or to be going to school, right? Um, not only what your classroom is or what school is, but the deeper essence of it, right? Like the deeper meaning of what it means to be a school, and what it means to be your particular class, right? And one of the folks on Typebook, he was talking about how he didn't really have any sort of deep connection to any of his classmates or anything necessarily, but he still felt this sense of melancholy when the school year was over and he was no longer going to be around these people. And, in theory, there was going to be a new class, in the next year. And I think part of what's going on is, NI has sort of, when you're in a classroom setting, and especially, over a long period of time, you develop the sense of this. When I talk about school and when I talk about my class, this is what I mean, right? Like all the people that make up my class and my teacher and my school and everything that's sort of associated with the concept of my classroom, this is it, right? And when that changes, now all of a sudden you have disrupted the essence of what it means to be your class or your school or your classmates, right? You've disrupted that essence because you are now replacing the particulars, right? When you move on and you go to a new school or you go to a new class, and now all of a sudden you have a bunch of new teachers and a bunch of new classmates, and you might even be in a new school. Those particulars now all have to be reintegrated, right, into your concept of what it means to be your class, or what it means to be your classmates, or what it means to be your teacher, right? And I think when those of us who have experienced something like that when we're younger, or even we're experiencing it now, like later in life, we get melancholy and we get sentimental because things are disrupting the way the essence of things, right? When I think of my favorite band or bands from when I was in high school or college, like they're sort of locked in time, right? There's this essence of who they were. Like they were the cool guys with the cool haircuts and the cool outfits. And now they're a bunch of 60-year-old guys who still wear pretty cool outfits and are still putting out relatively cool music, but they're not what they were 30 or maybe 20 years ago, right? And so it creates this bizarre disconnect in your head where your NI sort of locked in what it means, or the representation of your friend or your band that you're really into, or your teacher, or whatever it is that you've had, a prolonged and meaningful experience with. And you've developed this is the essence of who they are. And now all of a sudden, that concept is being replaced with something else, with a new teacher, with a new classroom, with a new school, with new students. And you have to reformulate everything, right? And create sort of a quote unquote new essence, right? And and say, and the same thing sort of with the holiday season, when the holiday season is over, with the changing of years, you've sort of embedded this, like, okay, here's what it means. Here are all the associations that I've tied to the meaning of this thing. And now all of a sudden the thing is being replaced. And all the associations and all the connections and all the different semantic links that you've developed all have to be rejiggered and replaced. And yes, there's still sort of the concept of what it means to go to school and what it means to be a teacher and what it means to be a classmate, but you're forced to deal with the fact that like you have a whole new set of particulars, and this class or this teacher might have a completely different meaning to you, right? Yeah, I mean, maybe you loved your fifth grade teacher and now your sixth grade teacher, you're not so crazy about, right? And so now all of a sudden you have to change your whole concept of what it means to be your teacher, right? Or again, maybe you got along relatively well with your classmates, or at least they left you alone. If you're an INFJ or an INTJ, they left you alone enough to where you could respect them. And now all of a sudden you get this whole new set of classmates and they're doing weird things that your old classmates weren't doing, and you have to sort of integrate that into what you're thinking. And so because of that, and because NI is so dominant and we're so used to creating these, or not really creating, but focusing on the essence of things, when that apple cart gets disrupted, it really bothers us in a very particular way. If you're an NI dominant. Um, And so for those of you, who are INFJs, INTJs, who are going through changes and sort of feel like, oh wow, this is kind of hit me in a weird way that doesn't seem to be hitting, everybody else in the same way. Maybe that's what's going on, right? I mean, maybe sort of you've developed this core concept, you have a general understanding of what it means to be a teacher, what it means to be your classmates, or what it means to be 2023, right? And now, or living in the year that you live in, and now all of a sudden, things are changing, and you have to change along with them. The particulars of the environment are changing. And I like to say that NI is usually, sort of knowledge without, it's not based on experience, but, nothing is completely absolute or living in a vacuum. And you certainly are going to be tying in your experience with your classmates and your teacher and your school or whatever, or your experience with the band that you're really into or the actor that you follow. That's all going to feed into sort of your NI concept of them, right? The NI meaning of what those people or what the situation is. And unfortunately, time marches on, right? And we would like to think of our NI understanding of things as timeless, right? Going back to that other commenter, I'm starting to maybe understand where he's coming from, where there is this sort of timelessness, right, to your NI meaning, and that sort of, metaphysical field that we play in when we're using our NI. And then all of a sudden, the world changes, the environment changes, and we have to update what that representation is. And it's not fun. It's not fun at all. We'd like everybody to just stay in their place, right? Especially as INFJs, right? We like putting people in boxes. We like knowing what the hierarchy is. We like knowing what the different relationships between people are and who they are. Like, not only like, what's their name and all that kind of stuff, but who are they, right? What type of person is this person? What is their relationship to me? How do I feel about them? How do other people feel about them? And when that gets disrupted, now all of a sudden, we got to change things up. And our NI would, all things being equal, would rather not do that, right? Um, would rather have the essence of something be timeless and immemorial, right? Last forever. But you got to move on. You got to change classes, or the seasons change, the years change, and those of us living in our little NI worlds have to sort of bring in that SE kind of information and adapt. So there it is, melancholy, sentimentality from the NI perspective. Let me know what you think. And again, I'd encourage you to watch their video on this. I got a kick out of it, and it made me think about a lot of stuff. Okay, cool. Everybody have a good night. See you next time.